We're back on, guys. If you could you introduce yourself for the camera one more time, just in case I missed it?
So there you have it. My name is Ford Fischer, Fischer, and I'm the managing editor of news2share.com and the director of Transhuman.
My name is Alejandro Alvarez. I'm also a producer at news2share.com, and I'm helping Ford out with this documentary.
All right, and my name is Danny Quest. I'm a contributing editor with We Are Change in New York City. I'm here with these guys because they're working on a documentary on transhumanism. They just got back from BiohackCon. All right, well, they just got back from BiohackCon. We were talking about some amazing technological innovations about merging our bodies with machines and all the ways that computers are going to help us change our perception and further integrate our bodies. And the next thing that we were going to talk about was the introduction of a cashless currency through transhumanism. They said that a lot of interest at the convention was in injectable microchips and how they would help us interact with the world. VeriChip, I remember seeing the first commercial for VeriChip probably in the mid to late 1990s, and they were pitching the idea in Congress that human beings should be microchipped in order to keep track of us and keep track of our finances in order to create a cashless currency society. What do you guys think about that idea?
Yeah, so it wasn't something that was talked about very extensively there. However, part of the motivation for some of the people doing the RFID chips is that eventually it could become something where only sort of the Luddites would not have them, that eventually it would be considered, in the norm. So right now, these are people on the fringe who are very sort of ahead of their time, or at least is what they think. But the technology exists very simply to put in an RFID chip a key that somebody could pay using a cryptocurrency.
Yeah, exactly.
Using their hand.
In a way, similar technology is already being used for stuff like Apple Pay, or the equivalent technology on Samsung phones. So it's only one step further for adapting some kind of cryptocurrency usage for RFID chips. The current applications for the injectable microchips, which we witness people getting over the weekend, are stuff like opening your car, for example. You just touch your wrist or your hand to the car door and it opens. But I don't see. I'm sure that the same technology could eventually progress towards payments as well.
Awesome, that's amazing, guys. Yes, as a libertarian, I don't mind at all. People are free to do whatever they want to do. If they want to inject microchips or what have you into their bodies, they're more than welcome to do that. My only problem, it comes in when it's mandated or forced or otherwise a requirement. Like there's no other way to pay for goods but a cashless society. That's why I wanted to talk about that. It's definitely something that's been in the libertarian circles and in the free state sovereign circles and even some of the more conspiratorial circles, if you start talking about like the mark of the beast and all those angles that have been placed upon it. The second thing that I really wanted to touch on that I had written down for me as a journalist that I'm concerned with when it comes to transhumanism is the applications inside the military industrial complex, DARPA. In most instances in our brief history as Americans and in the world as I know it, technology has been firstly applied to war, to machines of the battlefield and to the protection there of the patent holders, if you will. And I was wondering if you had seen or come across if the military industrial complex or any of its subsidies were involved in BiohackCon at all, or if there was any of that nature there.
Right.
No.
Not
Not at all.
Briefly put, no. There's no actual presence of military or anything like that
at the conference itself. Yeah.
But
there was one mention of DARPA.
There were several. People had the exact same question that you have, which is, what if the military is the one that sort of begins to use all of these new technologies that we're talking about? And in fact, Zoltan Istvan, who ran for president as a transhumanist and who's an advisor on the film, and he has a microchip in his hand, has spoken to us before. But he's described that the military actually had been inquiring, and he had spoken to people in the government about the possibility of microchipping soldiers, that there could be a application there. So it's not unheard of to think that these things would happen. But at the moment, transhumanism exists very much in a gray and black market space, which isn't to say that it's explicitly illegal or that there's some kind of transhuman cartel, but that because doctors are afraid to participate in this technology, it ends up being people who are not licensed medical, professionals. It's people who are selling these products to each other, doing self-surgeries, self-experiments, because no law precludes you from doing that. So there is this really big disconnect so far between governance and transhumanism. It tends to be that the philosophy of the transhumanist is a lot like the philosophy of the libertarian, which is I own my body and I can do what I want with it. And that is the justification for any of this, which is nobody has the right to tell me that I can't.
Right. And did you mention the cyborg bill of rights?
And so
that was a big aspect of it too.
Going with that, we had done an interview with a guy who works at the ACLU, and NDFF. So that sort of merges. He's actually working on a cyborg bill of rights, and so it tends to be that, at least because this is not something that's societally or government accepted at this point, that the realm of government and transhumanism is so separated, and transhumanists tend to be very libertarian, at least from a personal perspective. Right. But there are many different wings. I mean, there is the sort of libertarian wing of the transhumanists. There's an anarchist wing. There is also sort of a far left wing, and the intra-transhumanist political sphere is fairly diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's amazing stuff, guys. I don't want to keep you too long. There's a few more things that I wanted to touch on, and I'll give you free reign to plug your upcoming movie and talk about the most exciting things you've seen. One of the last things that I had written down, I've been very interested in recently, and it's kind of a multi-pronged thing between our minds and machines and how they connect, and also relating to mind control and mind-to-mind communication and mapping. One of the things that I look forward to, and I'm far from a Luddite, I believe that technology and education is what can liberate man and the evolution of consciousness, that we can create a technocratic utopia on this planet. Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek is a good example. But for injured, paralyzed, paraplegic people, otherwise handicapped people, we are now entering the realm of being able to control a fully automatized machine or cyborg elements of your body by your mind. We are there now. Did you see any of those instruments, and how did that go on and play out?
So we interviewed Angel, and I'm forgetting her full name, but
Jufrey, something like that. Yes.
Yeah, I could figure it out for you on Facebook, and we'll send you photos and picture and video. But we interviewed a girl who actually attended last year, and she's fairly high profile because she's actually an actress as well. But she was born without her left arm, and so she has been wearing prosthetics her entire life, which gradually have been getting more and more complex. But she has actually a fairly strong ability to function it like any other hand. So she is able to turn. It has a bionic wrist that she's able to turn. It has fingers that she can actually move separately. And it's worth noting that it's not connected to her brain. It's not that her brain is telling her to move it just like a finger. It's that the technology can recognize the uses of other muscles in the part of her arm that exists, and then she is able to tell it certain motions by flexing certain muscles there. We also documented a drummer who lost his hand a while back, and he has a prosthetic that pretty specifically allows him to create certain rhythms with the prosthetic arm, so he is able to actually continue being a drummer, a drumming musician, with that missing hands replacement.
Incredible. All right, well that does kind of segue into the next thing. What about controlling robots, cyborgs, military apparatuses, or even another person remotely with your mind? Did you come across any kind of remote viewing, remote control technology, that kind of stuff at the convention?
So there were concerns about that sort of thing, but nothing like that
Nothing.
exists.
Yeah, I don't think that there's the technology as it stands right now. I don't think is sufficiently advanced, even in niches, to allow full brain electronic interfaces. I think the aim in the field is to progress towards something which might be that right now. But the closest thing we found to like sort of human robot interaction, is again the drummer example, where he showed us a video of a project that he had worked in where he actually managed to play kind of in a song with a robot that was on the keyboard, right? So he would play some of the drums, and then the robot would respond with its own tune, right? Just autonomously, not via somebody else telling it what to do, just according to its own programming and functioning independently. We didn't really see any examples of direct, human robot, cohabitation interaction. That's probably the closest
in a way where a third party could control them.
Yeah.
However, one person who we spoke to is a guy who goes by the name Iborg because he lost his eye when he was young in a mishandling of a shotgun, and he has replaced it with a camera that wireless that is in his eyeball and moves around as his eye would, and he is able to transmit that live to a computer. And so we did an interview with him, but we have raw footage from his eyeball that we're going to include in that interview. But somebody that I wanted to mention is that Cory Doctorow was the keynote speaker. And he was giving the example that something that we should be worried about as we enter a transhumanist era, or if we enter a transhumanist era, is that in the past, he uses the example of HP. They had a series of printers that they put out that had a piece of code in it. And as I'm looking around this room, I see an HP printer actually right behind our computer that had a piece of code in it that after some amount of time after they released it, like 6 months, it would decide to stop accepting third-party ink. So people buy the printer thinking that they can use third-party ink cartridges, and then at 6 months in, everybody who had one of these HP printers, it would just stop working with the third-party ink. And so he described how, okay, so somebody has, there's this code in this machine and you don't know it as you're buying it, and you can't use the machine the way that you want to because the company is still saying, we own the code, you can't edit your printer, and you basically can't tell people about this issue. You can't expose the issue. So Cory Doctorow tells us that although this is an example where essentially HP is just trying to screw people out of money by getting them to buy the proprietary ink, that there are two basic principles that have to be applied to new transhumanist science. Number one, devices obey their owners. Mm-hmm. Number two, security facts have to be legal to disclose. I'll start on the second one.
It's very Asimovian kind of.
Right.
So yeah.
Starting on the second one, if I have a chip inside my body and it screws up somehow, it can't be illegal, as it currently arguably would be under DCMA. It cannot be illegal to or violate the terms and conditions for you to tell people that something is wrong with this, that this line of code is what screwed it up and ended up with me getting some kind of injury to my body. But secondly, that and the more important principle, the device in my body, I have to be the one who is controlling it. So he would consider it a right that once I've injected a microchip into my body or any other device, there cannot be a third party, such as the corporation that sold it to me, some other person, or even the state that somehow is able to remotely control something that is in my body.
Exactly.
Right. So imagine that you have a chip, or imagine that you have a bionic arm, imagine that you have a bionic eyeball. There is implicitly a right that needs to be codified that the state or anybody else is not going to just remotely take over that. Yeah. And as you were mentioning, what happens if it's something that is embedded in your brain or something like that? And that's all very, very theoretical at this point. There's no chip implants into the brain at this point, but it's something they've theorized about. That would be very, very applicable at that point. If you're injecting a chip into your brain that, let's say, helps you with your memories or somehow offsets Alzheimer's disease or something like that, the notion that some third party could send a worm, a virus or something like that into your brain, and try to affect the chip or receive information that you don't want to give it. Those are things that need to be codified as a right for that not to happen.
And that's very concerning because there is kind of already a precedent for that kind of level of access by third parties. I mean, any cloud storage service that you use, Google Drive, or otherwise, or Facebook or Twitter, for example, those parties, in the terms of agreement, by using their site, they still retain the right to access your information or terminate your account at any point according to their terms with no kind of input on your part. So there is kind of already a precedent for that. And I think what Dr. O was arguing is that we kind of need to ensure that if we get to the point where humans develop a direct relationship with internal, brain implants, for example, that you as the human, retain complete sovereignty over that technology.
Yeah, that's smart. It reminds me of who was it, Kant, Immanuel Kant, who said that an apple on a tree belongs to everyone, and an apple pick belongs to the person who picked it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of the same thing. Is that and when you mention terms and agreements in small print in relation to injectable microchips, that does turn into a very precarious area, and I appreciate that good doctors work, and in a democratic republic moving forward into a technocratic future, we definitely need anointed codes and rights, for our future, and leaving with that, where do you guys see this technology heading, with the work you've done and the movie, the documentary that you're working on? Where do you see us headed in 15, 20 years? Where do you see this ultimately going?
I think that, so first of all, we have a lot more to see, right? We've been to one conference.
We're not by any means done with our documentary just with this.
Right.
It's kind of our starting point.
But from what I've seen so far, it seems like a lot of the technology actually is about putting under the skin things that we already have. So in the case of the girl who has developed a sense that tells her if there is an earthquake somewhere, I could also look that up on my iPhone. With regards to a person who has a camera in his eye socket, I can also film things on my iPhone. Somebody who has an RFID chip, they're basically just they're Android chips. A lot of this tech is really just about going under the skin and bringing technology that we already have closer to us. So the direction that I see it going in 20 years really isn't so much a development of all kinds of new functionalities. It's about taking the functionality that we already have and integrating it even closer to our bodies.
Yeah.
Agreed. That's real life Pokemon Go, but with
exactly
Playboy models.
Imagine having like an ocular implant, an implant in your eye where you can just project a Pokemon in front of you. That's right. Kind of the technology which I think these people are trying to head towards in 50 years or something. There was one application of visual, augmented reality called quantum experience. Remember what it was called?
It was something like that.
Quantum something. But they kind of are trying to develop what is essentially, as they described, the holodeck from Star Trek, which is an interactive environment where it's kind of like a wearable, they use an HTC Vive to plant you inside a virtual environment where you can just walk around in 3 dimensions and customize the world according to your will, So I think that's the kind of technology which could easily kind of move over from the niche that we witnessed into, the mass, a more mass consumer culture in due time.
It's a great conversation, guys. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. You can take take the end of the time to go ahead and plug your movie. Tell us more about what you have coming up for the future, and where can we find more of your work?
Yeah, so the movie is called Transhuman, a documentary, is sort of the working title at least. We are here for news2share.com, news the number 2 share. You can find us on Facebook. My name is Ford Fischer, Fischer.
Yep, and I'm Alejandro Alvarez. I'm on Facebook as well. I'm also on Twitter at @LATweetsNews.
And by the time that you've posted this, I think we're going to have a Patreon set up where if people want to continue funding the process of making this film, they'll be able to contribute to News to Share as a whole and on the film itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we would love to involve our audience, in the production of this documentary. With any questions anybody has, we'll kind of act to answer those, in the frame of our documentary.
Right. It's worth noting that we're not getting bought out by any big corporation. We're not making a commercial for transhumanism, right? We're trying to fund this at the grassroots exactly because we don't even want the perception that that anybody's going to drive it in any direction. So in order to make that our philosophy, we need people to contribute. At the smallest level. I would much rather a grassroots film than the mainstream media fund us.
Nice. Well, I look forward to it, guys. We are Change. Will definitely support you. We've been interested in transhumanism and into microchipping and stuff like that as regards to libertarian philosophy and anarchic philosophy. So we'll be in touch, and in the time I get this out, hopefully we'll be able to get more up with you soon and have lots of followers. All right, guys, it was great.
Glad to be on.
All right, thank you.
Have a nice night. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
See you.